Everybody now. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Mac computers for beginners. We're going to start out by talking about some things that are different about Mac computers and talk about a few things that aren't different about Mac computers. If you're not super familiar what I mean when I say Mac, I mean an Apple product. They come in many different forms. Sometimes they look like laptops, sometimes they look like desktop computers. A lot of the newer Macs are kind of like all-in-ones. Macs can look like a lot of different things, but I'm just going to go ahead and get started. If you have questions, there's a chat down at the bottom of the screen that you can drop questions in. I emailed you all this morning with the link for this video, and you are free to email me anytime you have questions. I'm always happy to help out, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen really quick. I am actually working off of a Mac laptop that I use for work. And we're just going to start with a quick tour and talk about a few things. Let me get everybody admitted. So some things that are the same about Mac computers. If you are familiar with using a PC or really any type of computer, you use the internet. Gosh, I'm sorry. It's been a while since I've used a Zoom meeting. I'm going to move this bar up to the top so I can actually see the doc. Okay, so if you've used a computer at all, you're familiar with probably a few different things like the internet. Browsers work the same across different platforms. So if you're familiar with Google Chrome on a PC or a Linux machine, you can also use Google Chrome on a Mac. If you are familiar with a lot of different applications, like the Microsoft Productivity Suite, things like Word or Excel, they work just the same as they do on any other computer. They look a little different, like the menus are in different places or the way that you access it is a little different. But if you can use Word on a PC, you can also use Word on a Mac computer. Some things that are a little different. PCs generally have some software that come with them automatically. Apple has their own different products that show up on computers. We're going to talk about some of those apps later on in this class. I won't go too deep into them just because there's a lot of them. But another thing that's pretty similar between Mac computers and other computers is they have a lot of the same ports. So if you have like a USB headphone set that you use, it will likely also work in your Mac computer. Now, Apple has started moving towards having a lot of their ports be kind of Apple specific so that you buy their accessories and their products. So if you're ever looking to kind of set up your home office a little differently, maybe you're looking for a new mouse and keyboard combination or speakers, always check the compatibility to make sure it'll work with your Mac computer. And you also need to look at the type of ports that you use. On like my personal laptop, it has a lot of the things like an HDMI port, it has a USB, it even has a spot for SD cards. But then you get into some ones that are like let me get over here. This lightning port is a little different that you may not have seen before. And this one has a headphone jack, but a lot of newer Apple computers don't even have headphone jacks anymore because they sell, of course, like Bluetooth enabled headsets nowadays. I don't know if you guys use AirPods. Those are a thing that a lot of people are using now. But if you are looking to buy accessories, just make sure you check the system requirements. Now, we're going to look at a few things on the screen just to kind of get oriented with a computer. Again, if you're familiar with the PC, you probably have the start button down here in the corner. You have your bar down at the bottom where you can access all of your apps. You have your file explorer where you can look at files that are saved to your computer. All of that's different on a Mac, but again, works very similarly. So here on our desktop, we can see a few different things. If I put my mouse down here at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice that this dock appears. You can actually set it so this appears all of the time. If you kind of right click in here, you can, let me try right clicking over here. You can set it so that you turn the hiding off. So this dock is around all the time. I have it hidden most of the time because I like to use my full screen and I don't want to have to look at the dock. But if you are often switching between different apps, it can be convenient for it to be at the bottom. You can also do things like turning magnification on. That will make it a little larger for you. And I think you can even shrink it and make it larger or smaller. And I would describe what I'm doing on my trackpad, but it's kind of hard to. But you can do lots of different things to kind of customize this to fit your needs. The way you access that is you just kind of hold your mouse over here on the dock, right click, or if you're using a trackpad to right click, I have to click with both fingers. And you can just see different options on here. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this on just so we can see it throughout. In your dock, there are a few different things on here. There's shortcuts to apps. And I don't know if I can move this. Yeah, we'll move that just right there. So down here at the bottom, these apps that are down here, these are the apps that I frequently use, like Zoom. I use it a lot. Final Cut Pro is where I do my video editing. Google Chrome is my browser of choice, so I have it saved down here. But say you want to customize this a bit, you can actually pretty easily reorder things. So if Google Chrome is the thing that you use most often, and you would like it to be over here on the far left, you can just drag and drop it over there. You can also remove things. So let's say I don't use Photoshop as much as I used to. I can actually right click on this, go options, and remove it from my dock. And now it's not sitting down here in my frequently used app, so I don't have to look at it. Over here, this little section is stuff that I've recently had open. So earlier in this program, I opened up Microsoft Word, so it appeared here. You'll notice that this app down here actually has a tiny little dot under it, as well as does Zoom. The reason those have little dots under it is because that means the application is still running on my computer. Now, I'm not going to shut down Zoom because I'm using it to talk to you all right now, but because I'm not using Microsoft Word anymore, I can go ahead and shut that down just to make my machine run a little more efficiently. So I'm going to right click on here, or with my trackpad, I'm using both of my fingers at the same time. And by trackpad, if you're unfamiliar with that term, on my laptop here, the trackpad is this little thing right here. And you can actually customize what your trackpad does, which I will show you how to get to later. Hopefully I remember to do that. Anyway, back to Microsoft Word. We're not using it right now. So what I'm going to do is actually go quit. And you'll notice when I do that, it takes away that tiny dot that was under there. That means the program's no longer running on my machine. If I want to remove this, maybe I don't want this recently used section right here, I can actually just go options, remove from dock. But maybe Word is an application that you use often. There's a few different ways we can get to different apps, and I'm going to go into more on this in a minute. But for now, I'm just going to use this little search bar and look for Word. It pops up over here. Now, let's say I decide I want to keep Word in my dock. What I can actually do is right click on it and go into options and ask it to keep it in my dock. So you'll notice it's moved over to the other side of this line, and I can reorder it wherever I want it. And again, if you don't want it there, you can go options, unselect that. And then if we go quit, it should disappear as soon as we can quit out of the app. So that's kind of the rundown of the dock, how to, get different stuff in there. As I mentioned earlier, you can make this larger and smaller as you want. You can hide it. And I always look to make sure that I'm closing as many apps as I want to, as I'm not using, especially if you're doing something that requires a little bit more juice, like if you're doing video editing, it takes up a lot more of my computer's energy to do that. So having as many apps closed as possible is always the way to go. Now, if you ever want to go look at all of the apps that are on your Mac computer, you can use this thing called a Launchpad. So it's one of the icons that's down here in the bottom of the dock. It used to look like a rocket ship. This newest version of my OS, which is my operating system. And I am just going to go into this little Apple icon up here and go into About This Mac. If you're ever curious what kind of computer you're working with, if you go into Apple icon about this Mac, it'll show you a lot of things in this little box right here. You can see that I'm running Mac OS Big Sur. What that means is the operating system that I'm using on my machine is called Big Sur, which is the newest version of Apple's operating system. If you're working on a PC, you're probably working with Windows or Linux. And if you've used Windows before, you might recognize some of the names like Microsoft 7, Microsoft Vista, which was a terrible time in everybody's lives. I hope you never had to go through it. I recently updated to Big Sur on this machine. And one of the things that it changed was what my Launchpad looks like. Also in this About This Mac, you can see other things like what type of machine I'm on. So I'm on a MacBook Pro that was purchased in 2016. So it's a mid-2015 model. You can see what kind of processor you have, what kind of memory you're working with. You can also go into things like storage and see how much storage you have on your device. And if you're looking to clean up your machine, like maybe you've run out of storage, this manage button is a really handy tool to use, and it can show you where most of your stuff is being stored and help you clean it up a bit. But there's also some other things up here like display. If you had like monitors plugged in or something, that would show up here as well. But About This Mac is a handy thing to know where it's at, especially if you're ever getting support. They may ask you what type of processor you're using or what type of machine you're working off of. I did not plug in my laptop, so I'm going to do that really quick before it dies on me. I apologize for not doing this ahead of time. I don't usually use this computer, and I thought it would last the full time. Okay. So back to the matter at hand. We're looking at the Launchpad next. So the Launchpad, oh, that one's not working. Okay, there it goes. So the Launchpad down here on the bottom in my dock is a place where I can go find all of the applications that are downloaded to my machine. So when you click on the Launchpad, it'll open up to a page. If your Launchpad doesn't show a whole lot on it, just know that there's more pages to it. So you can either, with your trackpad, swipe over to go see more apps. Or if you're not super comfortable with swiping yet, there's also the arrows on your keyboard. I think will eventually get you over there if you kind of thumb through everything. Oh, I lied to you. That won't do it. You can also click on these dots down here, and that'll navigate you to the different pages. And in your Launchpad, you can also reorder stuff how you want it. I don't go to the Launchpad a whole lot because there are a couple of different ways that you can find the things you're looking for. There's this little search bar up here in the top right-hand corner where you can just type things. So say you want to open up Photoshop, you can just type Photoshop and it'll take you there. There's also a keyboard shortcut, which I always forget, so I'm going to look for it really quick. It's Command Spacebar. So on your keyboard, if you hit the Command key and the spacebar, it will also pull up the Spotlight search for you and let you search all of the applications and the files that are available on your machine. So again, in our Launchpad, you can kind of thumb through and see everything. Now, if you want to add some of these things to your dock, like let's say you use Microsoft Teams a lot, to do that, you're just going to open the app and then again, right click on it, options, keep in dock. I'm actually going to force quit this because I don't want it to sign in. And you can see it's in my dock now, but I can also go and remove from my dock. So pretty easy to do there. My machine currently sounds like it's about to take off, which I don't know why. Maybe Zoom is working real hard today. So usually in this class, I talk about how to use different wireless accessories. I don't actually have any of them with me. And if you guys have any accessories that you purchased for your Apple computer that you're wanting to learn more about, please feel free to ask about it in the chat because I can talk about that for days. But I am going to talk about a few things that you can do to kind of customize your experience using an Apple computer. And then we're also going to talk about how to find files because that's also a really important thing that I haven't talked about yet. So on a PC computer or with a Linux machine, you probably are used to seeing a file explorer. It's that little manila folder that's down at the bottom of the screen that lets you access things like your documents and your photos and your videos. On this computer, you have a Finder. So a Finder works very similarly to a file explorer. It's called something different. So Finder, it's this weird little like half white, half blue face down at the bottom here. And when you open it up, or when you close it, you'll notice that it has this dot under here. I actually can't shut down a Finder. The Finder is something that runs in the background of your machine at all times. But once you're in the Finder, you'll notice a few things. It's got your favorites. So my recent folder, so you can see all of the recent files that I've opened. AirDrop is something we'll talk about in a minute. You can see all of your applications that are on your machine, or most of them that are on your machine. You can see your desktop, which you could also see without looking at the Finder, but it kind of will order things. You can also go into your documents and your downloads. To kind of customize how you're looking at your Finder, you've got some different tools up here at the top. You can look at it as tiles. You can go and look at it as kind of like a list of everything by name, size, what type of file it is, what date it was added. And very similar to any other computer that you've probably used, you can do things to sort them. So if you sort it by the date that it was added, you can have it going from newest to oldest or oldest to newest. You can also sort by file type. If you're looking specifically for all of your JPEGs that you have, it'll sort all of the JPEGs together. You can also, pro tip, if you're ever trying to clean up your computer, you can search by size and see what's taking up the most space. This computer is primarily used for video editing, so there's lots of videos on here, and videos can be very hefty files that take up a lot of space on a computer. Also over here on the left-hand side, you can see what devices are plugged into your machine. So say you had a flash drive plugged in, which I actually have one here. My Tulsa Library flash drive, which you can purchase at the library. And if you plug it into your machine, it should show up here on the left-hand side. This is probably going to be called no name when it does show up, if it shows up. Let me try a different port. There it goes. Okay, so that port over there is probably not working. But you can see my flash drive that I just plugged in over here. It's called No Name, and in it, I can access it in the Finder. Also, when you plug in USBs, they will also usually show up on your desktop. So you can see No Name here, and I can open it that way. And then one thing that's a little different about ejecting flash drives from Mac computers, you can, of course, right click on it and choose eject. You can also hit this little up arrow right here, and this will also eject it. And then some computers even have an eject button on the machine itself, like on your keyboard, but not every keyboard has that option. Now I plugged my work phone back in, and you can see it's also popped up here under locations. But this is your viewer, this is your Finder. You can do lots of things in here. You can also search for files. So say I'm specifically looking for a screenshot, I can search screenshot and it'll show up here. But again, you can also do that in the spotlight, which again, you can access here, or if you hit on your keyboard, Command Spacebar, I can go spotlight search and also search for screenshot, and it'll start popping up all of the images that are labeled screenshot on my machine. So pretty handy. So there's lots of things you can do to kind of customize your experience with a Mac computer. And one of the things I always suggest that people kind of navigate to first when you're first using the machine is to customize it. So I'm going to go in here into this little Apple icon, and you'll notice and this is something I always forget to mention. When you have an app open, like I have Zoom open right now, you'll notice the very top of this screen has different options that look very similar to the top of like a PC when you have an app open. When I click outside of this app, it'll go back to having Finder in the top bar. If I click into the window of Zoom, it'll have the Zoom menu at the top bar. If you are not currently in an app, like I'm just going to click on the desktop here, you'll notice that the top left-hand corner goes back to Finder. So like I said, Finder is always running at the back of your machine. But this Apple icon should always appear in the top left-hand corner, no matter what app you're operating in. So on this menu, we've already looked at About This Mac. The next thing we're going to look at is System Preferences. Now in System Preferences, you'll notice a few things in here. Usually if there's these little red icons, that means you have something that you have to pay attention to. If your Apple ID has a red icon, it probably means you need to log back in with your Apple ID. This is a shared Apple ID account, so it's kind of a nuisance to log back in, so I'm not going to. But the most important thing that you need to pay attention to as far as notifications go is your software update. On your software update, I usually recommend people automatically keep my Mac up to date. You have that checked. What that will do is anytime there's a system update, if your computer's plugged in and on, it'll actually update it overnight while you're asleep, and then you wake up to a freshly updated computer. If you don't want that turned on, you can uncheck this and search for updates and just update as they show up. This one actually appeared today about 10 minutes before this class. So I decided not to update so that I wasn't late for you all. But this menu has all of the things that you can do to kind of customize your experience using your computer. The one that I really recommend people go look at are the trackpad and the mouse. One of the things I hear from most people who are new to using Mac computers is that the mouse is really hard to use, or it's uncomfortable to use. They've actually set up really intricate things that you can do to customize your experience using a mouse or a trackpad. So first, we're going to look at the trackpad. First off, the point and click, and this actually has a nice little picture for us. You can set up different things that you want your trackpad to do. So I can set it so that I can tap to click with one finger, and you can choose if it's a light tap, medium tap, or a firm tap, what it'll do. You can also change your tracking speed. So right now I have it kind of at a medium speed. If I change it to fast, anytime I move my finger, you'll notice my mouse is going a lot faster than if I have it set to be, say, it's slow. So if maybe you have a little bit shakier hands, or you don't have as much dexterity with your fingers, changing your tracking speed can make the trackpad a lot more comfortable to use. You can also ask for things like haptic feedback, which will kind of vibrate. You can also turn on silent clicking so that you don't have to listen to every time you make a click on your machine. But if you would prefer to hear when the click happens, you can turn that on. There's also the zoom and the scroll and zoom menu. So your trackpad can do lots of different things. If I have this turned off, it will make it so that when I scroll up, it will move it down. And if I scroll down, it'll move it up. I prefer the natural zoom or the natural scroll because it's comfortable, but I know some people who need it kind of the opposite direction. You can also do things like rotate your machine where you put your fingers on, and then you can twist pictures, which is handy, especially if you're doing any editing. Smart Zoom will basically let you tap to zoom in and out, but you can also zoom in or out with your fingers, where if you expand, it'll zoom in, and if you contract, it'll zoom out. Now, if you don't want those things turned off, this is something that you can also do by unchecking these options in this menu. And then there's more gestures, and I actually haven't looked through all of these because I think some of them have updated recently. But things like scrolling left or right with 2 fingers is pretty handy. So if we go back to our launch pad, I have both of my fingers on my trackpad. if I swipe them both at the same time, just very light movement, it'll move through the different pages of my trackpad. So these are things that you can kind of look at. It will tell you, you'll notice as I hold my mouse over it, it kind of illustrates what's happening. So it'll explain to you what you're customizing. Now, if you're using a Mac, a lot of people use, sorry, if you're using a mouse on your Mac, most people have these if they are using like an all-in-one unit, or if you have your laptop on like a laptop stand and you have a mouse and keyboard separate. The Apple mice can do almost everything that a trackpad can do. I do not have one with me, so I'm not going to be able to customize it. I forgot to grab one. But the Apple mouse can do basically a lot of the same things that a trackpad can do. It's just kind of a more traditional mouse. And the things that you can kind of customize on there include like your tracking speed, the force with which you click, and then also what a right click is. You can set it so that when you click with the right side of the mouse, it'll right click. But you can also set it so the middle will right click, just whatever's more comfortable for you. And they're kind of ambidextrous. So you can also set it so that your left hand is using it versus your right hand. The thing I despise most about Apple mice is that to charge it, you charge it on the bottom of the device, which is just the most useless thing in the world, because when it's charging, you cannot use it. But they are handy tools, especially if you're looking for a more ergonomic setup for your laptop. So these just connect with Bluetooth. You can also get keyboards that connect via Bluetooth. This keyboard setting right here, there's also some things you can set up in here, including shortcuts. We're actually going to talk a little bit about keyboard shortcuts because there's a lot of them. But one thing that's nice is you can actually come in here and set up your shortcuts to work however you would like them to. Also in this little Apple icon, there's a recent items option where you can see different items that are available. You can get into your app store if you want to purchase new apps or download different apps. You can do that there. Force quit will quit out of any programs that you have open. So let's say I have, let's see here, system preferences opened. I can go here into system preferences and quit the app, and you'll notice that it's shut it down for me. And then you can also do things like sleep, restart your machine, shut it down. You can log out over here. I know somebody who spent 30 minutes trying to figure out how to log out of a Mac. So just Apple icon, log out, and that'll get you in the money. So the next thing we're going to talk about are some keyboard shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts are very different on an Apple computer. And I'm going to just look up a menu. Apple actually has a pretty extensive article on their support site that has all of the different options in here. I don't actually know how to use all of them. I feel like every time I go look at this menu, I learn something new. But on a PC, you usually hit Control Shift or Control V, Control C. On an Apple computer, it's just a little bit different. On your keyboard, you have, this is hard to do, this command key right here. Now the command key works a lot like a control key. So to copy and paste, you're going to hit Command C to copy, and then to paste, you're going to hit Command V. There are lots of different keyboard shortcuts you can use. And again, the list is huge. There's a few really important ones that I like to mention to everybody. So Command C is what you use to copy. Command V is what you use to paste. Command Z is my personal favorite keyboard shortcut. And I'm actually going to open up Notes just so I can show you some of these. Okay, who knows what's on here. Okay, so in this note here, I am just going to for example, type example. Now, to highlight all of the text on this screen, I can hold down Command A, and that'll select everything for me. If I hit Command C with my keyboard, and then Command V with my keyboard, it will paste it. So again, to highlight everything, Command A, to copy, Command C, to paste, Command V, and you can see that I'm pasting here. My favorite shortcut is Command Z, which is the undo button. So if you hold down Command and you hit Z, it'll undo the thing that you did last, which again, I use all the time because I am often making mistakes. But also on here, there's a super handy tool, which is Command Q, which will quit. I would not recommend trying this one out when you're doing something important. But you'll notice I am in the Notes app right now. You can tell because I have my Notes toolbar up here. And if I hit Command Q on my keyboard, you'll notice it closed out of that app. It quit it. Now, if I were to do that when I was in Zoom, it would shut down this meeting for everybody, which is not super convenient. But if I want to close out of this Chrome, Command Q will close out of it, which I'm not going to do because there's a couple other things I want to show you on here. They also have different shortcuts for like sending your machine to sleep or shutting it down. So if you're looking for some ways to save some time, definitely recommend learning keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to send you this full list in my email follow-up with you all, just because there's some handy tools on here. And again, every time I look at this menu, I feel like I find something new to use. And then of course, the one that I showed you earlier, Command Spacebar will pop up your Spotlight search so that you can search everything on your computer. So I mentioned earlier that kind of a big main difference between PCs and Macs are a lot of the software that's available on your machine. Your Mac computer comes with kind of default programs that can be used for lots of different things. On a PC, you traditionally have a Notes app, like a Notepad app. The equivalent of that on a Mac computer is the Notes app. Now, one of the things that most people really like about Apple computers, and one of the main reasons that I use Apple products, both in my work and in my personal life, is how easily they sync up between devices. So for school, I have my laptop that I use for everything. I recently also purchased an iPad so that I can do all of my school reading without having to lug around my laptop. And then I also have my crusty, cracked iPhone that I use. And because I have my Apple ID logged in to my cell phone, my laptop, and my iPad, they sync up between devices. So files that I have on my laptop, I can also access on my iPad, which are things that you can set up in your iCloud account and in your iCloud settings. I feel like I've gotten off track here with this, but one of the things with the Notes app, if you have your Apple ID logged into multiple devices, when you set up notes in your Notes app, you can also access them on your phone. So a thing that I do often is I use the Notes app to come up with my grocery list. And I can just start adding things like milk, bread, eggs. And when I open up my Notes app on my phone, my grocery list will be there right there for me to access when I'm on the go, which is super handy. So the Notes app is very similar to probably Notepad, or I don't know if Windows really has, or if Microsoft really has an equivalent for this. Windows has an equivalent for this, but it's a handy app. I'm going to quit out of it using my Command Q. Another app that comes kind of downloaded, pre-downloaded on Apple machines, you have things like your contacts. Now, contacts is super handy, again, if you have multiple Apple devices. If you sync up your contacts right, and the contacts that appear on your phone should also show up in your contacts app. Also from Apple, from like a Mac computer, you can send messages using oh gosh, what's it called? I think it's called iMessage, Messenger app. It might just be called messages. Anyway, you can send messages, you can FaceTime using your Mac computer, which is very similar to like an iPhone that also has those mobile apps. Also on here, you can find your photo booth. This is always a really fun one to use if you have kids, because there's lots of different effects they have on here. My niece loves to turn herself into a frog. There's also thermal camera, which is always super fun. Some of the more productivity apps that are available on here, iMovie can be used for video editing and is free with your computer. There's also Pages, and I'm wondering if I deleted this app. Maybe I'm just going to use my little search bar. Command space, Pages. Okay, I apparently deleted this app from my computer because I have Microsoft on here. But Pages is kind of like the Apple equivalent of Word. It doesn't have as much functionality as Word, but it can be used very similarly. There's also Numbers, which is the Excel equivalent, which if I removed Pages for some reason, I assume I also moved Numbers from here. I apologize for that. I should have checked that before today. But there's lots of things on here. You've got a calculator, a dictionary. One thing that's pretty handy, like whenever you're, let's say you are at tulsalibrary.org, a website we all visit daily, and you don't understand what curbside service means. I can highlight that text, right click on it, and look at it. Look up curbside service will take me over to usually my dictionary. You can actually set up what those right click things do on my devices. They will look it up in my dictionary. You can also just search Google for curbside service. But as I said, there's lots of different apps on here. And I wish I had them downloaded so that I could show them to you. But two of the really cool ones about Mac computers, iMovie, which can be used for video editing, and then GarageBand, which can be used for auto editing. So if you're looking to start a podcast or produce your own music, these are apps that are very handy for that sort of thing. And then there's also Keynote, which again, I apologize for removing from this device. Keynote is kind of the equivalent to PowerPoint for Microsoft. But if you're a Microsoft user, you of course can purchase a Microsoft license and also download those apps to your device for a low yearly subscription of probably $50 or whatever they're charging nowadays. So I think that's a lot of what I wanted to talk about. There's a couple other things I'm going to point out just because I think they're kind of cool. I am going to stop sharing and share my iPhone here. So this is my work phone that I use for work. I work in the IT department, so I get a lot of calls. But one thing that's pretty handy that I really like about Apple devices is they have a thing called AirPlay. So if I swipe up from the bottom of my screen, and this is an older iPhone, so it looks a little different between different iPhone devices, and tap on the middle of this. I don't know if you can see that. If I tap here in the middle of this monitor, or if I hold it down, you'll notice this menu pops open, and there is a tool here called AirDrop. This is a really fun thing to use if you're newer to Apple's devices. I have my AirDrop set so that everyone can send stuff to me just because I use it a lot for work. I usually recommend contacts only for people, but again, this is my work phone, so I have it turned on for everyone. And with AirDrop, I can actually send files over Bluetooth to different devices. So I have my personal phone here, which I have also turned on AirDrop for. But you can also do this between like computers, laptops, iPads, anything that's an Apple device. So I'm going to go into my photos, and I took this really pretty picture of a palette of printers on Wednesday. So say I need to share this with myself on my personal phone. I'm going to hit this little up arrow. Remove this little up arrow right here to share, which is kind of the share button on Apple devices. And I can go into AirDrop and find people that are nearby. And let me make sure my AirDrop is turned on my, this worked earlier when I tested it out. Let me make sure I have it turned on for everyone. Okay, well, sometimes these happen during live programs. Anyway, with AirDrop, you can typically AirDrop it to other devices that are in the area who also have AirDrop turned on. For whatever reason, my cell phone's not showing up anymore. I'm gonna try one more time. Okay, well, that's all right. Anyway, that is usually a pretty handy thing that you can do between Apple devices. So I'm going to stop sharing that now. And go back to sharing my screen again. So there are just a few things that I wanted to mention. If you're looking to learn more about Apple computers or learning how to use your Mac, Apple has a really robust support site with a lot of really handy articles. So if you're kind of stuck on a specific thing, if you go to, I can type support.apple.com, you can search for things for days. You can also pick what type of device you're working with, and they have very good help articles on here. I also wanted to point out the Apple support. I think it's called Mac Basics. Okay, they've moved it since I last went here. Okay, I'm gonna have to find this link to you and send it to you later, but they have a Mac Basics. Maybe this is it. So you can sign up for live sessions that they teach online, but they also have official Apple support. Okay, they must have removed it from their website. I'll look to see if I can find it and send it out to you. It looks like they've changed the link to it. There's also really good video tutorials available with your library card. If you come here to tulsalibrary.org and go into programs and services, we have an online learning page that has pretty awesome resources. My favorite of these is lynda.com. So with lynda.com, I'm just going to type in my super secret library card number, please, so nobody steal it and do anything crazy with it. But you can log into lynda.com with your library card and your password. And in here, there are just like a ton of video tutorials for all different sorts of topics. They've got lots of classes specifically for Apple products. But if you want to learn about more how to use the Photos app, you can search for Photos. And I think over here on the left-hand side, you can narrow it down by software type. So if you're looking specifically at Photos for OS, which Photos is kind of the Mac specific app for looking all of your photos between your different devices. But if you want to learn more about Photos, you can actually find pretty extensive courses on here. This Learning Photos for OS looks like it is almost 2.5 hours long. And in here, they have like kind of specific breakdowns. So say you want specifically to retouch a photo, you can find that with your basic editing tools. They also have transcripts, which is super handy. And they also have exercise files. So if they're ever doing something on the screen, you can actually download the files that they are also working on and do it side by side. So it's a really good hands-on tool. But I've actually got like a list of different classes that I have found on here. But there's one that's called Mac OS Tips and Tricks that has like cool, handy tips that you can learn for utilizing your different computers. I don't know if they have anything for Big Sur, but I'm sure they do. And if we look for beginner videos, they probably have stuff on here specifically using for the newest version of Apple, Apple's OS, which is Big Sur. So Linda is a handy tool and it's free with your library card. So I definitely encourage everybody to check it out. But I think that's all I have for you today.